Hello everyone, Laura K. Buzz here with an unscripted video because Kirby Air Riders came out today, and I want to do a quick little tour of Nintendo's first-party published video game to have its own proper dedicated accessibility menu. I did a little scripted video when the Nintendo Direct for this game went up, talking about what Sakurai had sort of shown off of this game's accessibility. But I want to jump in and look at the full menu and see how the execution is done here, because this is a really exciting moment for, being someone that likes Nintendo games and is in the accessibility space. Right, so let's have a look. We have we have options, and there it is, accessibility, with the little stick figure and icons on the left here that I assume are meant to be different varieties and categories of accessibility. All the Kirby characters are very excited about, which is adorable. Let's jump in. First up, controller. This is basically button remapping. We've got things like the option to turn rumble off, or you can change rumble for specific things, so like racing rumble versus menu rumble, which is interesting. Motion controls, do you want them on or off? Do you want to be able to do shake controls? Basically, decent amount of ability to change default things on controls, or do overall button remapping. I think if we look at the side here, it's what does each button do? You highlight it, you can change the function of each button. Here's the interesting bit. So let's start with, actually, let's talk about these first. So when you go into display settings, there's a couple of categories of, very modular things you can do in here. And I'll talk about all the modular settings in a minute. But these little boxes down here are basically accessibility presets for some of those more granular settings that you could be changing in the display settings menu. So if you go to HUD, you can do little presets for text size, HUD opacity, and outlines. So you've got a medium and a strong HUD preset. And for visuals, you've got this whole big list of stuff that gets changed: field of view, sensitivity, rotation, speed, shake, tilt, gradient focal lines, etc., etc., that can go to medium or strong. But if you don't want to fiddle about with all of the granular settings, they have some presets, and I think that's very cool. Looking at the general accessibility settings menu, text size, you've got two options, small and large. I'm glad that the large is there. I'm glad that the box for the text is large enough to accommodate the larger text. It obviously could go larger, you can have more granular options, but it's pretty cool still. You've got color filters for the most common types of color blindness. Not a perfect solution, but I'm glad to see it here. HUD visibility. This is maybe the most disappointing of the accessibility settings in execution to me. The size change on the large HUD is pretty pathetic, honestly. I would really have hoped for a much larger difference in HUD size. HUD opacity, the default is here. You can make it clearer. You can't turn it off entirely, but you can make it more opaque, which is nice. Outlines. This is what I expected when we saw the preview that didn't show the execution. You can put a little outline around your character. I do wish you could customize the color of these outlines, but I would prefer... I'm glad it's here. It being here is better than it not being here. I do wish you could customize the colors and maybe even the thickness. Field of view. You can increase or decrease the field of view. You can't see in real time exactly what that changed field of view is going to do, but you can see a sort of preview of roughly what the effect is on the left there. Camera distance, you can zoom out a bit from Kirby as a character. Do you want the camera to automatically follow behind Kirby, or do you want to have to turn the camera yourself? Sensitivity, rotation speed, camera shake when you take damage. Do you want the track not to tilt when you go around banked corners? The grid effect has a lot of really granular tweaks you can do for it. Do you want these focal lines? Do you want this outside border, the center borders? Multiple options of colors, which is really nice. Opacity, so you can make them a little more faint. You can have them like this, for example. Default is... default's pretty good, honestly. Line thickness. Do you want a reticle in the center? And if so, you want a Kirby icon, a dot, or a cross. Colors of reticle, which is really nice. Opacity of reticle. And you want to turn down the speed effects. All of these are really nice settings, and while I have little quibbles I could make here and there about how some of this has been handled, generally speaking, I think this is a really good first showing for Nintendo. If Nintendo... I think this is a optimistic ask, but I think if Nintendo were to go, hey, Sakurai, you've clearly got something good here, go talk to our other teams and teach them, like, the stuff that you learned and did in Kirby Air Riders. If every first-party Nintendo game going forward had this level of accessibility, that would be a monumental shift forward for accessibility in our industry, for Nintendo to get to this point consistently. So, like, I don't want to undersell how important a step forward this is. Also, I really like that you can do a little test ride, which we're going to do quickly here, to see, in practice, what are these settings you've set up look like to play. So you don't have to, like, load into a level. You can just play around in this little sandbox and test out your settings. I'm gonna do a little charge, hit this. And then when you're done, you can return back to the settings menu. Obviously there's other options available in other places. You can tweak other little bits of settings. Let's have a quick look. What's in sound? You can change the audio for different... You've got sliders for different kinds of audio. Change the language and voice of the narrator and announcer. Is there anything in these settings that isn't elsewhere, out of curiosity? Do you want beginner's guide on to help teach you how to play the game? Checklist hints. What way do you want split screen to work? Okay, I kind of like... They're doing one thing that I think is good best practice for accessibility options, which is mirroring your settings in two places. Having them both in the accessibility menu and available to find elsewhere, I think is pretty good. Do you want maps on or off? Map direction to be north or forward? Distance from rival? Ooh. Map times. Okay, so you can do a pretty good amount of tweaking what's visible on your overlay, which is pretty nice. You can get rid of some of this stuff if it's not going to be helpful or if it's going to be distracting for you. And anything different on controller? No, it appears to be largely the same. But yeah, that's a very quick look at the accessibility stuff and settings options found in Kirby Air Riders. Yeah, I could nitpick little things here and there that could be better, but honestly, if Nintendo could reach this point someday as like a standardized level of accessibility you see in their games, I would have infinitely less reason to be critical of Nintendo on accessibility. This is a template I would love to see Nintendo, like, get Sakurai to teach you how to make more of your studio's games this level of accessible, and I think we'd be making really good industry progress. This is a bit of a rambly, off-the-cuff video. I hope you enjoyed. I will be back with a more formal episode of accessibility going up tomorrow. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching. Goodbye.